What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 372 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher here with Drew Dinkmeyer to talk NBA playoffs. And, well, things are a little different. Last time we talked, it looked like teams were in control, and like almost every series, well, at least 3 of the 4 series have completely flipped. The teams that were going in with all the momentum have lost all of it or most of it. It's pretty nuts. We're going to start talking Denver for sure. The biggest flip of momentum. With me to do so again, Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, the playoff basketball has been fantastic. These series have obviously turned on a dime. I'm excited to talk through them, and especially excited to talk through Denver, Minnesota, a series that felt like it was on life support and now is kind of right back to where we expected it to be, which was a deep, long, competitive series. Took a little bit of an unusual path to get to 2-2 through 4 games, but we are here with a 3-game series with the 2 teams squared away at 2.
Yeah, and power forwards are apparently a big deal in the Western Conference. So, yeah, let's start with really Aaron Gordon and Jokic dominating. Man, Aaron Gordon, best game of his life. Just completely took over the game, brought the ball up, made some floaters, had, I think, 6 dunks. His defense was really good on Cat. Just an incredible game from him. And then Joker, yeah, I was listening to Lowe's podcast last week. Like, he downloaded the whole defensive scheme, and now he knows it. And he's been able to crush it, and those 2 guys just had really, really good games. The Jamal Murray half-court shot, I feel like, was a big play. So, yeah, well, what do you see about Denver just completely changing this from, oh, my God, they're dead, are they going to get swept, to they are looking pretty good now?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we touched on sort of when Minnesota took the commanding 2-0 lead with 2 road wins. One of the first things we touched on was how the shooting, the stretching of the floor from Karl-Anthony Towns and Naz Reid was really causing problems for Denver defensively. And if Naz Reid and Karl-Anthony Towns were going to shoot 50+% from 3, that it was going to be, pretty difficult path to Denver mucking things up defensively. And in games 3 and 4, we saw a little bit of shooting regression from those 2, Nickeil Alexander-Walker included, who also started shooting the ball well the first 2 games, did not shoot the ball well the last 2 games. And I think a big part of these series that we always have to kind of frame contextually is some of this shooting variance that happens from time to time. Now, why the shooting variance happens can be a combination of guys feeling in rhythm. I know Mike Conley was asked in the presser after game 4 about sort of Denver's shooting variance. And he said, we let them get comfortable with a couple of easy looks to start. And then, they feel comfortable there in the flow of things, and maybe they start making the contested looks more. And so there's a number of different reasons for why the shooting variance can happen. But I think one of the things that has happened in this series is it's flipped from Minnesota's role players making a super high percentage of their threes with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Mike Conley, Karl-Anthony Towns, Naz Reid, to the Denver role players. I mean, right now, Christian Braun, Justin Holiday, and Aaron Gordon, those 3 players combined are shooting over 65% from 3-point range in this series. That's outrageous. That's not even good shooting. That is like nuclear hot shooting, and it's changing the tenor of the series in a big way. I think Denver has certainly felt more comfortable getting into offensive possessions and generating good looks. Certainly the first 2 games of the series, a lot of the threes that they were generating were contested late shot clock threes. Now they're getting uncontested mid shot clock threes. That's a big improvement. The thing that I noticed within the first minute of game 3 was Jamal Murray looked a lot healthier in game 3 specifically. Game 4, I thought he looked better too, but game 3, he looked like 95% Jamal Murray from what I've seen in all the different playoff runs before. His ability to turn the corner, which is somewhat Jamal's health, some adjustments that they've made to the scheme in terms of having Aaron Gordon bring the ball up and kind of initiate that offense differently has allowed. But basically what's happening now is Denver setting screens in a way that is that, along with Jamal Murray's health and his acceleration, is allowing him to create space that he wasn't able to create in the first 2 games. And that's opened up everything kind of offensively. They're having to bring more help and more attention to Jamal. That's creating that mid-range floater game for Jokic that wasn't there in the first 2 games. That's creating over-rotation that Jokic is then able to pass out to the corners and get ball rotation and get Minnesota in chase. So there's a lot of different things that are happening simply because of a few extra feet of space. And that's the beauty of this game, is that a few extra feet of space that Jamal Murray is eating up a little bit quicker is forcing more pressure on this Minnesota defense in so many ways. So I think that's the big thing, is that Denver looks more comfortable offensively. I think both of these teams, for the most part, are getting fairly good shots offensively. But I think in the first 2 games, Denver looked totally out of sorts and very uncomfortable offensively. Last 2 games, they look much more in their comfort zone.
Yeah, I think that Aaron Gordon bringing the ball up, not only for the Jamal part to like take pressure off him, but it just messes up the geometry of the Minnesota defense. Like the fact that like your main rim protector has to guard the guy bringing the ball up, it kind of put him out of sorts, and I felt like they were kind of just off balance, really from the jump, and just their defense wasn't in the proper setting for that setup. So I thought that was a really big adjustment. I'm curious to see if they flip that now. If they go, okay, let's try Gobert. We saw it a little bit later in the game. We saw like Gobert guarding Joker a little bit more. I'm curious to see if that's like the standard for them. And then so another kind of like football, I know we're established to run. So I was thinking about this game in terms of like Anthony Edwards. Like when your star quarterback has like in this case Ant has like an A game, like you're gonna win almost every time. But that's a little bit different in basketball, right? Like you need your whole team to step up in basketball. I feel like more so than football if your star quarterback like goes ham. And that's what happened. Like they got Ant was kind of going toe to toe with Joker, and then I mean AG was unbelievable, and then nobody else had a good game. Like Cat was awful. Jaden had like a C minus game. Gobert had nothing going on. The bench was not there at all for this team. So I don't know. Just not having help at home. That's role players at home thing. Kind of didn't come to fruition there. What was up with? And so actually, one just to flip to Cat. So we talked about game two. Like I said, he was used like a guard, like a lot of spot ups, a lot of like kind of face up stuff. They went way post heavy, and I hate that. I thought that was a really big drag to their offense. I'm curious to see if they kind of can take that away a little bit and peel back there. Do you have any thoughts on the Minnesota offense kind of stalling at times, really besides Ant? Because everyone besides Ant was just not there. Well,
Yeah,
Conley maybe he's here, but
yeah. Certainly, one of the challenges that I think Minnesota had was Ant was so hot that he was consuming so
Mhm.
many possessions that I think when other guys got opportunities, it looked rushed to me, especially Karl Anthony Towns. This is one of the issues with Karl Anthony Towns is that he tends to play a little fast when things get tough. He's never kind of he always seems kind of like offbeat. This is a funny anecdote, but I have like no rhythm whatsoever dancing whatsoever. So like I was at this wedding at Houston the other week, and my wife was like, "Oh my god, you're actually on beat," and I was like, "Well, yeah, that." She said no. She goes, "You found the beat," and I was like, "No, the beat found me." And I was like, it's like a solar eclipse. Like once every like 22 years, I will be on beat. We just happen to cross at the same time, and because I'm just
What
moving,
song was playing?
I have no idea. I don't remember, but I
Dude,
just happened to catch the beat. And so I feel like Karl Anthony Towns plays offensive basketball a little bit like that. And then occasionally we see where he catches the beat and it's like a 70-point game for Karl Anthony Towns out there. And so he's playing a little bit offbeat, a little bit too fast. And some of those possessions, they end up leading to turnovers and different things like that. So I think maybe the post ups were trying to get him to play a little bit more under control and a little bit more on beat, and it didn't work. It didn't work particularly great. I think the stuff when Karl Anthony Towns is at his best is when he's doing that pick and pop stuff, and it's really in the rhythm of possessions. But what's happening when Ant is the center of the offense and kind of initiating and creating for himself and others, everything else, because he's constantly sort of looking and exploring and testing the defense, everything else, the rhythm of the offense gets a little bit disjointed. And Ant himself is exceptional, and he was exceptional that game. But I think the games that you've seen the others play a little bit better, the ball's been in the hands of Mike Conley a little bit more. And I think this is a tough balance to draw for Minnesota, because I think very clearly, like, Anthony Edwards is their best way to score. He's unstoppable. He's been incredible this series, both from pull-ups, from getting into the post, from botting people down there, from being able to explode past pick and rolls and get to the rim. He's been exceptional. And so I don't want to discredit and get them away from doing what's been so good for them. But in some ways, I think the unlocking everybody is going to require a little bit more of a shared offensive responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, it's like maybe they install more Conley Gobert stuff, but I don't know. I just think they got to get there. They got to get away from that cat post up game, man. I think that just really kills them, and let him be like a secondary ancillary piece there. I don't think there's much else to say.
Well, I have one question for you.
One thing I could throw it to you really quick. Those two Justin Holiday threes to start the second quarter were such a tone setter. I felt like I missed that when I was watching. I went out with my mom in the first half, and so I was watching it like after the fact. And I was like, whoa, how'd they? Like, it was kind of close in the first quarter. I was like, what the hell happened? Because I tuned in like late second quarter. Like, what the hell happened? And I was like, oh, Justin Holiday hit 2 threes, and they got like a huge cushion after that. So I thought those were big. But go ahead.
Well, yeah, certainly all the role player contributions and the 3-point shooting from Christian Brown, from Justin Holiday, like game changing, completely game changing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just takes momentum away when those guys are hitting threes. In like, Mike Conley talked about this. You like contest, you have good defensive possessions, and then you get beat by a good
Mm-hmm.
shot, and it's very deflating. So I think there was a lot of that. I wanted to ask you, obviously, the game we saw Minnesota play the best in this game was game 2. Rudy Gobert was not
Mm-hmm.
available for game 2 due to the birth of his
Yeah.
child. He's going to come under a lot of scrutiny and
Mm-hmm.
criticism, especially since late in the game offensively, he had a couple possessions that were just disastrous. And by the way, Rudy Gobert throwing up like the money finger sign again, like
Mm-hmm.
implicating that these games are rigged or whatever. Like, get out of here with that, Rudy Gobert. You've been nominated Defensive Player of the Year 3 times. There's no like conspiracy against you in this league. It's so ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And this is stuff that, like, small tangent here, but this is the stuff that is driving me nuts about some of the players in this league that are acting as if things are out of their control and like, woe is me. And then the stars, the actual, like, the guys who are actually taking games over, Anthony Edwards, like, anything that goes wrong, he's like, yeah, that was on me. That was on me. My bad. Like, I got to
Mm-hmm.
come out with more energy in game 3 or whatever. Jalen Brunson is like, yeah, that was a terrible shot from me in the 3-point shot that I took, forcing things. And that's something I'll learn from and I'll get better from. The difference in the approach to the accountability of whether things are happening to you or whether you can learn and get better and put your imprint on the game, I think is fascinating. And I'm noticing it more and more with like the very top end players. And to me, it's starting to draw a line and a divider between who I can trust in the playoffs and who I can't. And I hate these old boomer
Mm-hmm.
takes of like reading body language and different things like that. But that is how I feel when I watch Rudy Gobert give the money fingers because he commits another
Mm-hmm.
offensive foul, pushing somebody in the back. And he's like, nope, this is a whole conspiracy against me. Get out of here with that stuff. Now,
Yeah.
with that said, Rudy, I think, is going to come under undue criticism because they played so
Mm-hmm.
well in game 2. And I think that was the best that they can play. And I do think in some ways, this matchup, in terms of them getting their best offensive flow, might involve Rudy Gobert off the floor and getting more spread shooting kind of on the floor. But I thought Rudy
Mm-hmm.
actually played pretty well defensively in this game. And then those costly offensive possessions late in the game were just kind of the thing we all
Yeah.
like to laugh at Rudy Gobert about, right? That he's just not a dominant offensive player, and he's paid like he is a dominant offensive player because he is that on the defensive end. And so, what are your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts on Rudy Gobert and his role in the series and where Minnesota needs to go? We talked about in round 1 how against Phoenix, I felt very strongly they needed to get to one big lineups. The one big lineups that were most successful were the ones with Rudy Gobert out there, not with Karl Anthony Towns out there. I'm interested in your thoughts on the one big lineups versus the two big lineups and what we saw from Minnesota in game 2 without Rudy Gobert that's been so different since his return in games 3 and 4.
So again, going back to the Gordon bringing the ball up thing, and you talk about like I said, like okay, he can guard Joker. Guess what? Like Joker's going to bring the ball up too, so they're going to have to adjust how that is handled. I don't really know if they're comfortable. So it's weird because I thought Gobert's best defensive play was when he got switched on Jamal Murray, like in I think it was late third, and Jamal like has to take this late step back late in the clock. He like barely hits rim, and like that was where he was really shining, and so he can defend in space. But for some reason, like when they flipped that, it like really struggled. He like really was to your off rhythm thing. He just didn't seem like he had a rhythm to protect. And he mentioned after the game that like they couldn't. Like Aaron Gordon had like a lot of contested shots. He had like 6 dunks. So like he was uncontested a ton. But I don't know. I think I'll be all right. I don't know, man. I think Denver just like hit him with a haymaker and they couldn't really get in rhythm. So I still think they'll be all right. And maybe they come out kind of hungry. They just played so hard and they were so motivated. I think they kind of lost a little bit of that, which is very odd at home. But I
What do
still
you
think
what
they'll
do you
be
think their best
pretty
line?
good
What do you
defensively.
think their best lineup combinations are? Like, do you think it's the starting lineup is
Yeah,
their best lineup to get to?
yeah, I think so. I mean, Gobert's still a pretty good defensive presence overall, so I
Yeah.
still think their starting lineup's the best. And I mean, Na's been awful.
Yep.
Na was worst player on the floor yesterday by like a
Yeah.
lot. So
Yeah. He was the one
yeah,
who
and then
who made the turnover that Jamal Murray scored the three. That was a
yep,
reckless
yep,
inbounds
oh,
pass from Nikhil Alexander Walker that got punished immediately.
yep. And then Naz Reid wasn't too impactful. Had hit shots, but defensively he didn't
They
have that.
they found a way to
As
attack Naz
but
Reid that I think not.
yep.
This is one of the lower key things is they found a way to attack Naz Reid defensively that they're making it now that Minnesota's not able to play Naz Reid as much. Minnesota's not. They're starting to take some pieces off the table. We talked about Minnesota
Hmm.
having more chess pieces to start the game. Denver's starting to find ways to take some of these off the table a little bit. Now Denver's very limited in their chess pieces. They've had to remove
Yeah.
Peyton Watson basically, but they're getting a lot from Christian Brown and Justin Holiday, and that's kind of making all the difference right now.
Yeah, Christian Brown had some, had drew some big fouls. Didn't really play great defense, but he made shots overall. So, yeah, I guess we can kind of flip series here. Thoughts? Are we still? I think we both picked Denver in 7.
Denver
I
and
think that's
7.
kind of
I
where
still feel
we're
Denver.
heading.
I
Yeah.
feel Denver and 7, but obviously I will say I just think the first two games we reacted very strongly to because we had very big
Hmm.
concerns about Jamal Murray's health. Jamal Murray's health has looked
Yep.
better and improved since then. I think people are going to maybe take too much in these last two games and that Denver is like in control of the series. I don't feel that way at all. I feel like the series is still a
Mm-mm.
toss up. I feel like
Hmm.
Denver really won game 4 largely by just outrageous shot making from guys who don't typically make those shots. And so I feel like
Hmm.
Denver, they did their job. They got the game that they took advantage of. On the other side, you could say Ant's probably not going 12 for 17 or whatever he did and shooting 80% from three. Sure. But I think just generally, you just got the best game you're ever going to get from Aaron Gordon. I can't imagine him playing much better than that. And you got a great game from Christian Brown and Justin Holiday. And if any of those guys step back, will Michael Porter Jr. step into that role? Meanwhile, on Minnesota side, like you said, pretty much everybody outside of Anthony Edwards played poorly. In this game,
Hmm.
you take away that 8-point stretch in the 22 seconds to close out the first half, Denver
Hmm.
wins this game by 8. So I really still feel
Hmm.
like this series is highly, highly contested. And I'm still thinking Denver in 7 just because of home court, but home court hasn't meant anything in this series to start.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you there. So, let's shift gears to the other Western Conference series, which is apparently the PJ Washington series. Now, averaging I think 28 in his last 2 games. Random PJ Washington stat. So since in his last 2 games he's had 4 post up possessions. He hasn't had a post up prior to those last 2 games since in like a month. Like they don't play PJ post ups, and they've been putting SGA on him. So kind of off the top here, Josh Giddey I think is gone. I think they're going to start Aaron Wiggins and put Aaron Wiggins on PJ Washington. But Luka's been banged up. Kyrie's been really quiet. Like PJ Washington won him 2 games, and what have we been saying about OKC's 2 biggest weaknesses all year, right? Offensive rebounding. That's what got him in game 3. And then catch and shoot stuff. That's what got him in game 2. There were 2 weaknesses, really cost them. Shout out to Dallas for exploiting them and really speaking this series here. Really excited for this game 4 tonight. But first thoughts on, PJ. Can he keep this going? Does he need to keep this going? And like, did they just start Aaron Wiggins off the top and change that matchup? Because this SGA thing on him is not working.
Yeah, PJ's been incredible. He's shooting 54% from 3 in this series, averaging 22 points per game. He's the second leading scorer on Dallas in this series behind Luka Doncic, who's at 23 points per game. He's the third leading scorer in the series entirely. He's adding 7.5 rebounds per game. He's been great. Just exceptional. And really, this is what Dallas needed. When we last spoke about the series, our concerns were Luka does not look fully healthy, and Luka came out and played effectively in game 2, a little bit
Mhm.
more of a quiet or kind of ordinary game 3. And despite that, Dallas finds themselves ahead 2-1 with a home game in game 4 and kind of control the series, despite Luka looking 80% healthy, 75% healthy. Kyrie underwhelming in this series so far. Just 17 points per game, 3 boards, 7 assists. Not getting to the same level of shot taking and usage that we're accustomed to because of the one-on-one individual defense that OKC has, because OKC is giving
Mhm.
up the 3-point shooting. And I'm interested to see, I think this is OKC's strategy, right? Is like, let's try to hone in Luka and Kyrie as much as possible, and let's make the others beat us. I'm interested to see how long they're willing to stick with that strategy if PJ Washington keeps beating you. And I'm interested to see if that changes
Mhm.
here tonight. I think your suggestion on them moving Aaron Wiggins into the starting lineup and really relegating Josh Giddey makes a lot of sense. It'll be interesting to see if we'll see
Mhm.
that. Mark Dagnall's been, pretty committed to Josh Giddey throughout the course of the season from a starter perspective, but has had a number of games where he's gone away from him in the second half. He's had a lot of positive commentary on Josh Giddey in terms of like what we've seen from him for 3 years and all these different things. But he's been setting the stage, knowing that like during the course of the second half of the season, knowing there might be a time we need to de-emphasize Josh Giddey. And I think the time is now in this series. So I do expect that to be an adjustment made on Oklahoma City's side. But right now, the big difference in the series is PJ Washington is absolutely killing relative to Chet Holmgren, who is absolutely awful in the first 3 games of this series. And that's the big difference between these two teams right now. We've got one blowout win for OKC when PJ didn't play well, and we've got 2 close wins for Dallas when PJ did play well, and we haven't seen Chet Holmgren play well yet in this matchup.
Yeah, I want to talk about Giddey a little bit more. So 41 minutes with Giddey on the floor. They're minus 30 points per 100 possessions in that time. When he's off the court, plus 17 and a half. So we're talking about a 48 point per 100 swing with Giddey. He got to go, man. That defensive hiding thing they've been doing, I think that's affecting Chet as well. I think flipping that matchup will also help. They'll put Gafford or whoever on Wiggins too, but I think it's just a little bit easier because I think Wiggins is just a little bit more mobile and can kind of like, I don't know. I feel like that'd be a better matchup. And then so like you're not really getting much on the offensive trade-off. You're getting the defensive trade-off, which is kind of where you're at. So I think that's a good trade-off. So I think Giddey's probably done. Maybe he plays at non-SGAs. We'll see. Or maybe it's a really short hook there. So yeah, I don't know what else there is. Actually, the Derek Lively stuff, I thought that was interesting. He played really well. We saw the hack of Lively. Chet chasing Lively around for a foul was hilarious. Probably the funniest thing of the weekend overall. Do you think that the Lively minutes kind of beat Gafford minutes? Should mention Gafford's been banged up, had a back, had a shoulder, pinky. He's getting hurt like crazy. So how do you see the Dallas center split kind of going the rest of the way? They haven't missed Max and Kleba too much in the last 2 games. They have a little bit, but getting Lively's minutes been great actually. He's first on the team in net rating by like a ton. So they're going pretty well.
Yeah, combination of PJ Washington playing exceptionally well and getting value out of the center position, specifically on the offensive rebounds, which is where we thought Dallas could, potentially create more possessions and contend with OKC, with that being one of OKC's vulnerabilities. So, to me, it seems like if you continue to get great play from PJ Washington, you can continue to get great play from either Gafford or Lively, then the loss of Maxi Kleber is moot. It really doesn't matter as much. Maybe if PJ falls off, you could get increased better play from Derek Jones Jr., and maybe that can kind of cover it up. But right now, they've had somebody playing really effectively, at least like 2 of those 3 guys in their 2 wins, PJ and Gafford or PJ and Lively. And so I think the centers are doing a good job right now. I think Chet's not putting a lot of pressure on them on the other end. And I think right now that's a big difference in the series. It's like Chet isn't putting enough pressure offensively on the smaller guys defending him from Dallas's perspective. And this is where Chet is going to get bigger and stronger and more effective in other ways than simply stretching the floor and kind of attacking closeouts. That's the ways that Chet is fantastic right now offensively. But these other ways against smaller defenders who are able to close out with more control, this is where there's going to be need to be growth and development in Chet Holmgren's offensive game to be able to punish these smaller defenders. Right now, he's not doing that, and so that's allowing Dallas to kind of maneuver with comfort through this matchup. But yeah, I think Lively and Gafford in terms of the split going forward, I think it'll just be hot hand who's playing effectively between the two, and I think they both match up well enough in terms of their ability to attack vertically offensively and contend on the offensive boards with tip outs and whatnot. It's a little bit different. Lively's a little bit more of a tip out guy. Gafford's a little bit more of a grab and try to finish and put back. But they've both been effective so far, and I imagine whoever is effective will earn the bulk of those minutes.
Yeah, and just going to Chet really quick, this series he's been kind of bad offensively, but even closing out the Pelican series, he was kind of bad. So in his last 5, he's 17 points on 30 jumpers, so 0.57 points per possession. That's really, really, really bad. So he's got to get that going. When he's at his best, he's hitting. We saw early in the series, he was hitting his jumpers, and now they've all gone cold. J-Dub, ankle tweak, little concern there. He didn't have the same pop to me down the stretch. Been pretty quiet. Again, PJ, PJ's been, we bet 2 J-Dub overs, lost them both. I solo bet. I've been losing a lot of money on J-Dub overs. It's because I think PJ's kind of taking him out of his rhythm. He's still driving. And actually, to your point about I don't complain about the refs, but the whistle or the lack of the whistle in game 3 was pretty wild. Like, they were getting mugged out there. I thought that was probably the loosest whistle of any playoff game we've seen in the last game. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or how they can kind of help. SGA has been, good, not like great, but how do you think OKC's offense could kind of come to life here? They've been pretty bad. And should mention their transition to offense is a little bit down
Yep.
overall, which is not surprising.
Well, I mean, these are the things that we talked about with OKC, that they're vulnerable, right? They rely on getting to the free throw line. They rely on transition offense. Those are some of the easiest ways to score. In the playoffs, it's usually harder to find those ways to score. And certainly in game 3, it was harder for those. Game 1, they had a pretty tight whistle relative to the rest of the playoffs. They got to the free throw line a ton in game 1. I mean, Shea had more free throw attempts than most teams are having in game 1. So it's certainly and you're going to get different officiating crews that are going to call things different. The tighter, the better for OKC. They want more fouls called because of the way that they're able to defend without fouling, their ability to initiate contact and get to the free throw line. So some of that is going to be influenced by the different crews that they get. But certainly, I think what you hit the nail on the head is this combination of they're not getting transition points. How do we try to help get more transition points? We need to put better defenders out there. That's where Aaron Wiggins kind of comes into play. We need to get rebounds. We need to be able to move off transition. When you're taking the ball out of the net, it's hard. And one of the great things about Luka and Kyrie is just generally they're able to generally play offense with a modest turnover rate, and especially in Kyrie's perspective, a really low turnover rate relative to usage. So that'll be an interesting battle for OKC to try to see if they can create more easier points. And they got to be able to take away the easier stuff for Dallas. And I think a lot of that comes down to playing better defensive personnel combinations. I mean, Shea has been really comfortable this whole series. So like Shea to me seems in rhythm and comfortable, and Luka's not. And I'm surprised Dallas has had 2-1 with that scenario, but that's the power of PJ Washington and how well he's played in games 2 and 3.
Yeah. So where you at here? I still think OKC, like PJ just being such a supernova, and then easily correctable mistakes. Get Josh Giddey out of there. Hit the glass harder, which I think Aaron Wiggins will help that too. It's just so clear. Just start Aaron Wiggins and get Giddey out of there. But I still think OKC kind of is, despite being down, I still kind of like where they're at.
Yeah, I think game 4 is really going to decide the series tonight. Ultimately, I think if Dallas goes ahead 3-1, I think it will be tough for OKC to win 3 consecutive games in this series. I think if OKC is able to even it up, I think they win this series in 7. So I think game 4 will ultimately be the decider here tonight. I'm expecting OKC to show up and play well and play effectively. I do think they have more chess pieces on the table, although removing Giddey certainly hurts. And I do think they have more ways to score. I'm a little bit concerned about J-Dub and the ankle because that would really take out a lot. I'm expecting regression from both Chet Holmgren and PJ Washington. I think if you get both of those players playing to more of their normal levels, I think OKC would have won one of game 2 or game 3. So I think that's the big thing here. But look, OKC's down 2-1. They don't have a lot of margin for error. And as we saw in game 4 for Denver and Minnesota, sometimes the regression doesn't come on those role players in shooting. And if it doesn't, they're two L's away from being eliminated here in what's been a very, very good season for Oklahoma City. But yeah, I think game 4 ultimately decides this one.
Yep. I'm 100% in agreement there. Okay, so let's go to the Eastern Conference, and let's start with the biggest lopsided game of the playoffs. I feel like there were some bad ones, but I rarely say in the first quarter, like, okay, this game's over.
Yeah.
I said that in the first. I was like, oh my God, this game's freaking over. Like, the Knicks had no energy. The Pacers had all the energy. That turnover where like they were on a huge run, and like I think late first they turned it over and just gave them an easy basket. I was like, oh my God, this team just didn't show up today. I don't really even know what to say. Like, clearly this wasn't because of OG. They just didn't come ready to play here. Josh Hart playing 24 minutes. He talked about his energy not being there. Just a complete no-show performance from the Knicks. What else do you have to say besides that?
I mean, this series changed dramatically with the OG Anunoby injury. We talked about kind of the risks of that. I think New York had their chance in game 3. They had their chance. If they could have won game 3, I think they could take, they would be in absolute control of the series. They would just need to grind out one more win in the final 4 games, and I think they'd be in position to do so. When Nembhard hits that 3, takes the juice out of New York, since that moment, it's been no energy, really. You saw kind of the forced Brunson 3, sloppy play late in that game after the Nembhard 3, and then continued on into game 4. And without OG Anunoby, they don't have a lot of ways at stopping the ball. I know Knicks fans have been really excited about Deuce McBride's development during the course of the season. He has been a turnstile defensively in this series. TJ McConnell is just absolutely abusing him in this series.
Mhm.
And that's been the problem. They can't stop the ball right now. And if they can't stop the ball, they're constantly in rotation. If they're constantly in rotation and they're only playing 6 guys and they're playing like 4 guys 45 plus minutes, like you're gonna wear down. It's just it's too much. And Hartenstein gets dinged up yesterday with the shoulder a little bit. It just feels like this war of attrition is taking its toll on the New York Knicks. We talked about how confident we were going into this series, betting on the New York Knicks. I felt really confident after the first 2 games, and basically until OG gets
Mhm.
hurt. And then when OG gets hurt, it's like,
Mhm.
man, they lost OG, Boyan, Mitch Robinson. There's a lot of chess pieces now that are off the table. They're having to play lineup combinations that are a little bit tougher on them defensively, and they have this challenge. And then Brunson gets hurt as well, and Brunson has not looked the same
Mhm.
from an effectiveness standpoint. He gutted out the second half of game 2, but game 3 and game 4, had to have more extended rests periods. Didn't look the same explosion level. Anytime he's jumping off that leg at the rim, he's leaving things short. We saw a couple layups that he left kind of short, wasn't able to finish when he's jumping off that right foot. So he doesn't look the same. He's been the whole thing that's been carrying this team. So you've got Jalen Brunson now operating at, I don't know, 75, 85%. You're without OG Anunoby. You're without Boyan Bogdanovic, Mitchell Robinson. It just feels like there's not enough here to be able to withhold stuff. Now, maybe the energy of the Garden and playing at home can carry this team to getting through this series. I don't expect OG Anunoby to participate again in this series. If I did, I'd have more
Mhm.
confidence in the Knicks going forward, but I just don't think so based on the reporting and the hamstring stuff. And you said right when the injury happened, that's like a 1 to 2 week injury. 1 to 2 weeks in the playoffs is a
Mhm.
full series. You miss the
Mhm.
rest of the series when it's that. So yeah, I thought game 4 was an embarrassment, but also understandable with how much these guys are playing and how much they're being asked to do, that you might go out there for an afternoon game on a Sunday that's just 1.5 days of rest. A lot of these playoff games you get 2 days or
Mhm.
3 days of rest, 1.5 days of rest because it's an evening game going into an afternoon game, and you just don't have the juice. And so the question is, Tuesday night in the Garden, can the Garden help lift that Knicks team to
Mhm.
have the juice to be able to play a really, really strong game? Can MSG be such an intimidating space that they can steal some of these games? Because right now they are at a talent disadvantage with all the injuries that have hit.
Do they start someone different? Did they go to I think they kinda have to, but, like, do you start Alec Burks? That's kind of where we're at. Um, yeah, I mean, it's not crazy to me. I think they're gonna start Precious, but Alec's been pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on how the rotation could shake out?
I think it's possible that they go that route simply because they need to try to pace Jalen Brunson's offensive workload, and they need somebody else out there
Mhm.
that can create shots for themselves, and that's where Alec Burks has that role. This
Mhm.
was a different story when they felt really confident in Jalen's health. You saw this earlier in the series, early in the playoffs, when Alec Burks wasn't playing at all and was never playing alongside Jalen Brunson. You're seeing that change a little bit now, and I think part of that is the dynamics that they just don't trust they can get enough good offense. They were able to survive game 3 because Dante went absolutely nuclear from 3, and that was kind of keeping
Mhm.
them in it, as did Burks. Burks played really well in game 3 as well, so wouldn't surprise me
Yep.
to see that kind of change. um, yeah, they seem to be okay. They seem to be handling their own with Pascal Siakam, kind of regardless of Precious Achiuwa. I thought that was his main role
Mhm.
out there, but they seem to be okay regardless. It is a lot to ask of Josh Hart, though, to guard Pascal Siakam, play 48 minutes, be your team's leading rebounder. Like it's a lot to ask when Hart's giving up a lot of size there to Pascal Siakam. But certainly they need to infuse a little bit more offense and energy into the lineup. Alec Burks has the offense part, the energy part. Typically, that's been Precious or Deuce. So, not really
Mhm.
sure in terms of what direction Tibbs chooses to go. He's usually not a guy that likes to make lineup changes.
Yeah, we saw him start Deuce in the second half just because they were down so much. I
Yeah,
think to get them some 3-point shooting on the floor. And then what do you think about the Aaron Nesmith on Brunson adjustment? Do you think that's just Brunson being hurt, or do you think that
yeah.
Nesmith has had an impact on that? I
I
think it's just Brunson being hurt, honestly.
I think it's a combination of the two. But if you think about so Brunson's been beating up Nembhard largely because of his size and his ability to
Mhm.
kind of shoot over him, right? And he was beating up Neesmith early in the series with his quickness and his ability to get to spots and kind of his old man YMCA moves in the paint with his footwork and stuff, getting Neesmith off balance. When he doesn't have that quickness and that footwork or as much confidence in those things, Now he's having to shoot over. Now Neesmith's length matters more. So I think it's a combination of Neesmith is a good defender and has the length to disrupt Jalen Brunson, but I think the absence of 100% Jalen Brunson, 100% confidence in his footwork, his acceleration, his agility is leading to Aaron Neesmith in more comfortable defensive positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been just not getting downhill as much. He's one. How many front rim shots did he hit yesterday, man? Like everything was front rim from Brunson. Yeah. He's clearly not 100%. He can't get enough energy to get the ball over the front of the rim. So I think that's really hurting them. I don't know. I still think the Knicks are going to win the series, but I don't know, man. Like it feels pretty bad. That game was so demoralizing that I'm curious to see how they bounce back. Do you have any thoughts on if the Pacers could kind of take this thing down?
Yeah, right now the Pacers are favored. They're minus 132 on FanDuel to win the series the rest of the way, and that's my instinct as well. I think the Pacers. I think the Knicks are a broken version of themselves right now. If they either had OG Anunoby or a fully healthy Jalen Brunson, I might feel a little bit differently here. But they have neither of those things right now, and we saw Jamal Murray improve with more time off. They're going to go from Tuesday then to Friday. So maybe for game 6, there's that extra day of rest and recovery. Maybe that helps from Jalen's perspective. I think they got to win game 5. They got to steal one in the Garden. And that's where MSG and the magic of MSG, can it make it, can it steal a game for the Knicks? If they can, that's the way they win the series. But ultimately, like, I don't think Indiana's good. I've said this before. Yeah. I think Indiana is running as hot as possibly can be in terms of the injuries that they're facing in this playoffs and the watered down versions of teams that they're playing. So I don't have a lot of confidence in Indiana, but I'm looking at this other side and it looks like a haggard fighter at the end of a fight who just doesn't have anything left. And that's what the Knicks look like to me right now. So I'm leaning that the Pacers will win this by decision, essentially. But I'm hoping that the Knicks can hold on and the power of MSG can hold on, and we can maybe get OG Anunoby healthy again, maybe for next round if they're able to advance.
Yeah, we're doing pool work for OG, so that's usually a week plus. So I'd say he's a huge dog to return in this series, possibly the next one too. So it looked like a pretty bad hamstring strain. Okay, so last series, kind of the boring one. Boston did their game 2. Oh, whoops, we forgot to show up for this game thing again. And then they came back and handled their business. Talked a lot about, I expected a big Jason Tatum game in game 2. Got it in game 3. On-ball domination. His most ISO and pick-and-roll handler possessions he's had all season by a ton, by like 5-6 possessions. He was on the ball a ton, been waiting for it for so long. His jumper started to fall. He drove a ton, got to the line. Everything looked like it was peak Tatum again. He's not. I did notice he had a heat pack on him, so I was like, I was trying to find out like what the hell's going on with this guy. I've spent, I don't know, like an hour or two trying to dig into Tatum and like why he's been so cold. And I think it's just mostly just run bad, but a little bit dinged up. Everyone's dinged up. We talked ad nauseum about injuries. So yeah, does Boston just like shut this down? Where are you at with Boston and taking care of business with the Cavs?
Yeah, well, we have a Donovan Mitchell questionable tag now for game 4 as well, added to the mix, with Jared Allen still not present in this series and seemingly no real improvement in terms of his likelihood of playing in this series. And so now you're talking about a watered down Cleveland version, potentially, even if Donovan Mitchell's playing at 75-85%, which Donovan Mitchell has been the best player on the floor in this series. He's been exceptional. The Cavs have actually outscored Boston when he's been on the floor in this series, which is outrageous given the talent gap differences between these two teams. So if Donovan Mitchell plays like a normal good player instead of a super duper star, which right now he's, shooting 51% in the series, 53% from 3, scoring 31.5 points per game in the series, then it's not competitive. I didn't think it would be competitive with Donovan Mitchell playing well from the start. So big talent gap between these two teams. Expect Boston to be able to close this out, whether it's in 5 or 6. That's my expectation from this point. And it would be a real shame if Donovan Mitchell, who has been once again an absolute superstar in the playoffs, if he's unable to close as strongly as he started the series, because he's going to be a big topic of offseason discussion with him going into the final year of his contract, and he has earned every bit of that attention with his play in the playoffs. He's been absolutely phenomenal. So I'm just hopeful we get to see Donovan Mitchell perform at the level that he's been performing for a few more games. But I do not expect Cleveland to make this a series.
Yeah, we'll save the Donovan Mitchell offseason talk for the offseason, but that's going to be a big topic if his team airballs again, much like Utah again. Just no help again. They got help from Dean Wade. I thought Dean
Yeah,
Wade made an
he's
impact. You
great.
saw Dean Wade center minutes. Should note, Chris Fedor, I mentioned, listened to his pod yesterday. He said that Dean Wade hurt his knee a little bit and he had treatment. So that's something to watch because I think if they didn't have concerns about minutes, he'd start. I'd say like for sure. Because Okoro was just too
Yeah.
small in this series. He was too small last series too, but he actually kind of fared okay. Yeah. So, do you think they just risk it and just like, hey, Dean, just start, play 35 minutes, and our medical staff got you. Do you think that's the adjustment they go to, or is it being off for like 2 months? That's like just too dicey to do that.
Yeah, I don't know the significance of the risk on Dean Wade from a re-injury perspective and how the medical staff's going to handle that, but certainly he is an adjustment that's necessary if he is able to go. So I think we'll get a big tell on how they feel about his health on that starting lineup.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in the starting lineup. I think it's a tell that they just don't feel comfortable that they can extend him from a minutes perspective and tactically pick their spots. If he is in the starting lineup, maybe they feel more comfortable, but it could still be that they don't feel super confident and they just want to start the minutes against Tatum the best they can and see where they go from there. But yeah, certainly they need his size and his length to challenge some of the wing scoring from Boston. Boston they feel so comfortable offensively in this series.
Mm-hmm.
Feel like they're being tested in any way, shape, or form. In some ways, I feel like they've almost been too comfortable because there's so many times that I'm like, Jason Tatum, please just take the ball to the rim. Like, please.
Yeah.
One time, just like one time, but they seem so comfortable in the flow of the game. It's like it's like watching a pickup game, which is just really odd during the playoffs to see the drop off in defensive intensity. But that's what it's felt like for much of this series for me, except for like crucial moments late in the fourth quarter where the teams will bear down a little bit. But it's just felt like a little bit like pickup basketball to me.
Yeah, for sure. And then did want to shout out Drew Holiday. Defense hasn't been great, but offense was really, really valuable. Was aggressive with the shot, drove a little bit, had some jump shooting going on there. He played awesome. Jaylen Brown's been so good. 72 shooting in this series, just humming along here. Getting easy shots for days. Transition scoring's way up. Rim scoring's been really good. He's been awesome. And then tighter rotation. They went real tight. Peyton Pritchard getting 22, but 8 minutes of Luke Cornett. 10 minutes of Sam Hauser. I mean, that's where they're at. They're going to need Kristaps back ASAP, of course, but
Yep.
Pretty clear indication that we knew they had that sixth. But Pritchard's been a really, really good seventh man for them. Kind of just a low-key shout-out for him. Derek White finally cooled off. And then Horford, pretty bad offensive game. Defense has been fine. They've been doing that.
Yeah.
Evan Mobley, a big role for Mobley. We should talk about him too. Bringing the ball off rebounds. Yeah. Post-up's been really strong. A ton of paint touches, 10.2 paint touches per game, I think, in this series. Thoughts on anything I just said? Go for it.
Well, I've been critical of Evan Mobley from, coming in, I was so optimistic on Evan Mobley being like one of the elite of the elites. That's where I thought he was going to be because he's so unique defensively. And I've been discouraged by his playoff performances up until this point. And I think the last two games in the series, he's been exceptional. And I think that's probably, look, the Cavs fans probably knew coming into the series that this was probably the end of the road for this season. What did they want to see in terms of development? I think they wanted to see Donovan Mitchell continue to look like a star, which he has. And then I think the next thing that they wanted to see most was Evan Mobley show up and have some playoff moments. And I thought in games 2 and 3, he's been much more aggressive offensively. He's kind of punished this Al Horford matchup a little bit. Anytime he gets a smaller guy on him, he's actually been more aggressive in terms of trying to drive and then either pass to a teammate underneath or kind of finish up at the rim strongly. He's playing much more with his force towards the basket as opposed to playing softer and away from the basket. Now, I think some of that is helped by having smaller defenders on him, by having Al Horford on him. I'd love to see him play with this level of physicality and strength against some bigger opponents as well in the future, and maybe we'll see that in future playoff runs. But I think it's been a really nice corner turn to see Evan Mobley get some reasons for confidence building in the playoffs. And I'm hopeful that that will continue to lead him on an ascending path because he's so skilled both offensively and defensively. If he can play with a little bit more force and pick his spots a little bit better, I really think the sky's the limit for him.
Mm-hmm. And then just a couple quick hits. Garland's been awful, man. Just horrible, horrible postseason for Darius Garland. And then Max Strus just they're sticking Jalen Brown on him and not getting any space. So, and then Karras has been really good the last 2 games. So,
Yep.
and that's pretty much all I have to say. If you want to add anything, then we can kind of get out of here.
The Garland notes, it's like a continuation of what was a really pretty, average regular season as well for a player that looked like he was kind of on an ascending path.
I would
This
say
is his
below
age.
average. That second half was
Yeah,
so bad from him. It's
yeah,
massive disappointment to me.
yeah. And a player that, in his age 22 and 23 seasons, I think was better than his age 24 season. So he's still very
Mhm.
young. Maybe it's just a blip in the road, but I do worry that a player who was so built on kind of his ability to break you down off the dribble and then find and create for others while having like a good enough shot, he right now, he's not, we've talked about this for months now, but he doesn't seem to have enough confidence in his acceleration to get to the rim in an aggressive way. And so he
Mhm.
seems to be dribbling a little bit aimlessly towards the rim and looking to pass first. And there's a little bit of I guess the guy that I'm thinking most of with this is like Ricky Rubio, where like sometimes you're just breaking down the defense, and like if the first read isn't there, you're sort of just dribbling in circles and slowing down the
Mhm.
whole rhythm of the offense. And there's felt like a lot of that in the last 3 months of watching Darius Garland. And I don't know if it's a health thing. He was dinged up throughout the course of the season. I don't know if it's just a player, kind of plateauing, but it's a concern for me for
Mhm.
for the long term roster build of Cleveland. Um, and if they're gonna try to keep Donovan Mitchell, in some ways I wouldn't be surprised if Darius Garland's name started popping up in trade
Mhm.
rumors this offseason.
Yeah, I don't know. You could chalk it up to the fractured jaw thing, I guess, because that's what really derailed his season. He was really never the same player. But man, that was so long ago. That happened in what, January? So I
Yep.
don't know. But yeah, I think the Cows are like maybe they get one. I'd be pretty surprised if they get two to get this to 7. But
Yep.
yeah, anything else you want to mention to get us out of here?
No, as always, appreciate all the support. If you're supporting this podcast via iTunes or Spotify, please consider leaving a rating and review on that so we can get your feedback on how to continue to improve this. Also, if you're checking out the video version on YouTube, you can check out our Established Run NBA YouTube channel. We are just 50 subscribers short of our goal of getting to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the NBA season. I did not fulfill producer Ryan's request of showing some skin and trying to get us to that 5,000 mark. So I would love for you to all subscribe so I don't have to. So you don't have to see it. We don't have to do the gimmicks to try to get the clicks. And I cannot satisfy Ryan's request of showing some skin to get us to 5,000. So head on over to Established Run NBA YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel and help us get to 5,000 subscribers. If you're interested in the premium content, you can check us out at establishedrun.com/subscribe-NBA for more details on all of our premium product offerings on the DFS and the prop betting side of things.
Yeah, don't make us go out there and like panhandle and be like, "Hey, yo, subscribe to our podcast." I'll go out in the corner of my street, be like, "Hey, help get a cardboard sign." Like, "Hey, subscribe to the podcast."
Yeah,
But
me wearing a
yeah,
me wearing a Patrick Beverly mask on Third Avenue in New York, asking for people to subscribe to our podcast is not the way we want to go. But
yeah.
I'm not beneath it to reach our goal of
Oh
5,000 and
no,
make
we need
sure
it.
that Taylor and Adam are proud of us this year.
Yeah, we're gonna do it one way or another. Whether we are gonna embarrass ourselves doing it is TBD. That's up to you guys listening. So I appreciate everyone listening. We'll catch you guys next time.